Hi y'all, my name is Mr. Chao and welcome to Chao Time. Today's video is on a watch that I once considered a grail watch. And it's not that I don't like the watch anymore, in fact I do, it's just that I don't really have grail watches anymore. But that's a different topic for a different video. I'm doing it on this here, the Rolex GMT Master II. This one has the black bezel, it's really beautiful. It's on loan to me from my friends at Daming Watches in Kaohsiung, Taiwan. So big shout out to them for making this video possible and supporting a young channel in the YouTube community. If you're interested in the watch or you just want to check them out, the contact information is in the description below. How I review watches is by scoring them on a rubric that is ever evolving. I then take the score and apply a value multiplier. If you're interested in how I do this or how this process works, there is a video link on the top right hand corner that you can check out. After all that, I give a completely subjective opinion on the watch based on my emotions, how I'm feeling that day, the character of the watch, the kinds of things that I think about when I make a watch purchase. So let's get to it. Before we can begin scoring the watch against the rubric, we first need to understand what the purpose of the watch is, why it exists, and what design language inspires it. Well, the watch is a luxury commercial pilot or frequent traveler's watch. This will help me frame the review and give the review context. We'll start with the function, feel, and visual appeal of the case and bracelet. This watch is made from oyster steel, which is what Rolex calls the 904L steel it uses. It is more corrosion resistant than 316L steel, which is the standard in stainless steel watches, but also softer and more susceptible to scratching. Sitting on top of the case is a flat sapphire crystal with cyclops and a bezel. Rolex does not apply an anti-reflective coating to these scratch-resistant crystals. The GMT bezel has a black ceramic insert, which is also very scratch-resistant, and platinum-coated numerals. The bidirectional bezel doesn't have any play, but doesn't have any satisfying clicks or grooves when falling into position. Now that we've talked about the case materials, let's talk about the overall design. This case design is basically unchanged and has spawned many imitators. The big flat side slabs, the angles from above, the crown guards, and the bracelet use the same design language, each logically flowing together. The tops of the lugs and side links are linear brushed. The case side and center links are polished. The bezel is also split between linear brushing and polishing. The brushing is of a high quality, giving it a satin feel. There are three main touch points on the watch. Each is well designed and finished for use. We'll start with the bezel. They are cylinder cutouts, allowing for good purchase when spinning the bezel. It's just enough for the amount of force required to turn the bezel. The second is, of course, the crown, which is large and knurled for ease of use. Even with gloves, the crown is easy to turn and pull into each position. The third is the clasp. Here, we find a Rolex signed lever to pull up on the retainer, which allows you to get to the spring-loaded clasp release, which in turn allows you to get to the folding clasp. All these parts are milled and durable. Speaking of the clasp, there are three hidden micro-adjust positions. The bracelet links are secured with screws. All links are solid, as well as the end link, which is really the standard now for high-end watches. The taper on the bracelet, from 20mm to 16mm, helps it feel light and comfortable. The case back and crown are both screwed down, which allows the watch to achieve 100 meters of water resistance. The crown uses Rolex's trip lock as indicated by the 3 dots under the embossed Rolex logo, consisting of 5 gaskets in 3 zones, offering some water resistance even when the crown is unscrewed. Well played, Rolex. Well played. 8.5 for both form and function. Let's move on to the dial. It's a standard black dial that is minimally reflective. The applied indices are surrounded with white gold and polished. They don't really stand out, but are easy to see and read in any light. The hands are also white gold, which are also polished, with the exception of the green painted GMT hand. They are finished quite well until you get to levels of magnification beyond the scope of normal practical use. The basic dial layout has remained relatively unchanged since its inception. Near the 12 o'clock marker is the Rolex crown and namesake. At the other end of the dial is some more text. Here you find GMT Master II written in green, matching the GMT hand. All of the text is sharp and crisp. The modern Maxi indices work well with the rest of the watch while contributing to the exceptional legibility. It's hard to talk about Rolex legibility without talking about their amazing lume, dubbed Chromalite, which was introduced to the GMT Master early in the life cycle of this reference. It's the easiest to read at 3 AM of any watch I've ever had. 9 out of 10 for form, 10 out of 10 for function. The Rolex Caliber 3186 replaced the 3185 in the early 2000s. It features a parachrome hairspring which offers greater resistance to shocks and temperature variations. It beats at 28,800, like all modern Rolex calibers, and has an accuracy of plus or minus 2 seconds per day, which among other things makes it a superlative chronometer. It has a power reserve of 48 hours and contains 2 complications, date and 24-hour hand. The 12-hour hand can be independently set, which makes it a quote-unquote true GMT watch. There's not much to say about this movement. It's finished functionally with perlage, sunray brushing, and circular brushing in appropriate places. Equally important, it's a robust and well-known movement that is a favorite in some watchmaking circles. 8 out of 10 for form, 7.5 out of 10 for function. That brings our total objective categories to 51.5. Let's move on to the lone subjective category, heritage and prestige. I've discussed this already in my Explorer video, so I'll try to make this brief. Rolex has been making watches since 1905. The brand built its reputation in the first 60 years as a reliable tool for a variety of professionals. The GMT Master, a product produced in partnership with Pan American World Airways, was introduced in 1955 for pilots and frequent travelers who wanted to know the time in both their home and destination time zones. In the last 30 years, the brand has really become a powerhouse of pop culture, symbolizing wealth and status. It's the combination of Rolex's deep history and practical engineering, along with being a modern luxury icon, that makes this brand so special. This piece is well respected by those in the watch community, while being highly sought after by the general public. I'll repeat this from my previous video. Every major watch brand in the world would love to be in Rolex's position, to sell a mass-produced item so well that there is a fear of scarcity. 9 out of 10 for heritage and prestige, giving a total score of 60.5. This watch was released in 2005 and ended production in 2019. It sells easily north of $10,000 USD, which means that the value multiplier has bottomed out at 1, and the value score is 60.5 out of 70. So, that brings me to my personal opinion on this watch. Well, the size, the style, the functionality, I love it all. The case is 40 millimeters across, 12 millimeters thick, which is quite nice and thin, and 48 millimeters lug to lug. And if you look at it on my wrist, it's a 16.5 centimeter wrist. I believe it fits really, really well. The weight and balance on the wrist is really nice, and the aesthetic is kind of tool-like, but it's also a little bit blingy with the polished ceramic bezel and polished center links. 100 meters of water resistance is something that I feel like is a bare minimum for a watch for me. And as is the screw down crown, this is something I look for in every single watch. The GMT complication is my favorite complication. The second time zone is really useful for me as someone who lives overseas, because I like to know what time it is in the States. And when I'm traveling also, which before the pandemic was about 3 to 4 times a year, I like to know the time zone of my country of residence, which is now Taiwan. I've wanted the GMT Master II Batman for years now, but after having this watch on for a week, I must say the black with green accents has really grown on me. And I think it's really beautiful. The black colorway is a little bit less ostentatious than the Batman. It's a little bit more subdued. And also the Rolex clasp, for anyone who hasn't had a chance to use one yet, it is really something. See if you can hear this. So nice. It gets you right here. It's so satisfying. I want it. The only thing I would change about this watch is this polished center link. This really should be brushed. And also the stratospheric price tag. As a family man, I have family obligations and personal responsibilities, and I can't justify throwing down this kind of cash on a luxury timepiece. Oh well, it's something I'll look forward to achieving one day, I suppose. So that's it. Do you agree with my scoring? Is there anything about the rubric that you feel like should change? If there's any kind of content that you'd like to see me make, or a watch review that you'd like to see me do, let me know in the comments below. Thanks for making it to the end. Hope you liked the video. Bye y'all.